Iran is no stranger to geopolitical isolation. For decades, it has faced economic sanctions, diplomatic cold shoulders, and threats of military action. But what many fail to realize is that isolation breeds ingenuity, and necessity forces strategy. Beneath the surface, Iran has been quietly reshaping its global reach, not through open treaties or grand summits, but through a web of silent, strategic partnerships. These are not alliances made for the evening news. These are forged in shadows, born from mutual need, shared resistance, and a desire to defy the global order long dominated by Western influence. These partnerships stretch beyond the usual suspects. Iran's connections to powers like Russia and China are well documented, yet still misunderstood in depth. These aren't just diplomatic courtesies. They are layers of military, economic, and technological cooperation that run far deeper than casual observers would guess. Russia and Iran, for instance, share more than a regional interest in Syria. They exchange military technology, energy strategy, and a common goal of counterbalancing U.S. presence in their spheres of influence. China, on the other hand, sees Iran as a critical node in its Belt and Road Initiative, pumping billions into infrastructure and energy projects while quietly securing its foothold in the Middle East. But the real surprise lies in the less publicized partnerships. Venezuela, another nation under the boot of sanctions, has exchanged fuel, intelligence, and economic expertise with Iran. North Korea, often dismissed as a rogue wildcard, has long maintained military dialogues with Tehran, with murmurs of shared missile and nuclear technologies floating behind closed intelligence circles. African nations, looking for investors outside traditional Western powers, have welcomed Iranian development programs and security training. Southeast Asia sees a quieter form of Iranian influence, one that passes through ports, oil routes, and political exchanges rarely covered by mainstream media. What binds all these connections is not just politics, it's shared resistance. These are nations that have, in some form, been rejected by the Western-led world order. Their alliance with Iran is not always based on friendship, but on necessity, and necessity, more than anything, drives loyalty in times of struggle. Iran has masterfully used this principle, identifying countries with similar wounds and offering them what they can't easily get elsewhere: fuel, weapons, infrastructure, digital surveillance systems, or simply solidarity. This new web of influence operates under a different rulebook. There are no official logos, no press conferences, no declarations. It's quiet, but it's real, and it's growing. Iran is not trying to become a global superpower by traditional means. It's building influence like a spider spins a web not to be seen, but to be felt when it's too late to break free. For years, the world believed Iran was isolated, but isolation isn't absence, it's preparation. And Iran has used its time in the margins wisely, reaching out, building bridges no one noticed, and nurturing alliances that don't announce themselves until the moment is right. That moment may be coming, and when it does, the world won't be dealing with one country acting alone. It will face a coalition of the unseen, one born in silence, moving in sync and bound by a common goal to reshape the balance of power, one quiet move at a time, in the theater of global politics. What you see is rarely all there is. While media cycles spotlight loud declarations and televised meetings, the true game is often played behind closed doors, in encrypted channels, and on battlefields no one talks about. Iran has long understood this. It knows that to survive, to resist, and ultimately to influence, it must operate in the shadows where attention is scarce but impact is immense. Iran's strategic behavior over the past decade reveals a calculated, layered approach to power projection. No longer relying solely on conventional statecraft, Tehran has adapted to a world that has tried to contain it, choosing instead to shape its influence through unorthodox, often invisible channels. One of its most powerful tools has been asymmetry, doing more with less, using leverage where others see weakness. A prime example lies in its military strategy. Rather than amassing visible fleets or massive armies, Iran has doubled down on proxies, militias, and regional influence networks. Groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and various Shia militias in Iraq and Syria aren't just ideological allies. They are instruments of Iranian foreign policy. These groups give Iran strategic depth, allowing it to strike or pressure adversaries indirectly while maintaining plausible deniability. Through these proxies, Iran has extended its influence across borders without raising flags that would provoke direct confrontation. Meanwhile, cyber warfare has become another silent front. Iranian cyber units, often operating under the Quds Force or other shadowy branches, have targeted infrastructure, financial systems, and even foreign governments. Their digital operations aren't always as technically advanced as those from more resourced states like China or the U.S., but they are effective, persistent, and strategically focused. They serve as a means of disruption, intelligence gathering, and psychological warfare, all carried out without a single missile fired. On the economic side, Iran has become a master of sanctions evasion. Through a complex web of front companies, backdoor financial networks, and oil smuggling operations, it continues to fund its domestic economy and foreign activities. Nations like China and Russia provide vital lifelines, but Iran has also turned to cryptocurrency, bartering systems, and under-the-table trade agreements. Even in the face of crushing U.S.-led sanctions, it has kept essential exports flowing, money moving, and its economic arteries alive. Technology transfer has also become a crucial element of its quiet strategy. Despite embargoes, Iran has managed to make significant advancements in drone technology, ballistic missiles, and even nuclear enrichment. Its drones, now battle-tested in multiple conflict zones, have become a cost-effective tool for both surveillance and offensive operations. These developments weren't made in isolation. Iran has likely shared and received technical knowledge from allies like Russia and North Korea, forming a covert ecosystem of military growth. What makes Iran's strategic moves so significant is their subtlety. They're rarely loud or immediate. Instead, they're incremental, cumulative, and designed to avoid triggering direct retaliation while still shifting the balance of power. This method of quiet escalation is a calculated gamble, one that allows Iran to push boundaries without breaking the global system that still marginally holds it back. And perhaps most critically, Iran's leadership is patient. Unlike short-term election-driven policy in the West, Iran's ruling elite plays the long game. Their strategies are measured in decades, not headlines. They know how to endure. They know how to wait. So while the world may focus on Iran's overt nuclear ambitions or inflammatory speeches, the real action is happening elsewhere. In war rooms without windows, in code typed by invisible fingers, in trades carried out without signatures. It's a slow, deliberate chess match. And Iran, underestimated for too long, has become one of the quietest but most strategic players on the board. The global order as we know it has long rested on a delicate balance, one where power is centralized among a few dominant nations, and the rules are written by those who won past wars. For decades, the West, led primarily by the United States and its allies, has dictated the terms of diplomacy, trade, and security. But the emergence of Iran's secret alliances signals something deeper than tactical maneuvering. It points toward a growing shift in that balance. It is not just about regional influence anymore, it's about global realignment. Iran is not acting in isolation. Its silent partnerships reflect a broader trend, a collective pushback against the Western-centric model of global governance. Nations that once followed the rules are now questioning them. Countries that once remained neutral are picking quiet sides. The traditional power centers are being challenged not always by overt confrontation, but by alternative structures forming quietly beneath the surface. Iran's strengthening ties with Russia and China are central to this transformation. Russia, locked in conflict with NATO, aligned interests and facing its own sanctions, sees Iran as a vital ally both strategically and economically. Together, they coordinate in Syria, share arms technologies, and engage in energy cooperation that bypasses Western oversight. China, on the other hand, has no desire to enforce Western values. Its interest in Iran is rooted in long-term strategy, access to oil, trade routes, and a loyal partner along its Belt and Road Initiative. Their 25-year cooperation agreement is more than paperwork. It's a symbol of shifting power corridors from Washington to Beijing. But Iran's network goes beyond these giants. As Western sanctions isolate nations like Venezuela, North Korea, and parts of the developing world, Iran positions itself as an alternative partner. It offers fuel when no one else will. It offers military training when embargoes cut off supply, and it offers diplomatic solidarity when the world turns its back. These actions build more than goodwill, they build influence. Influence that can be called upon in times of crisis, in votes at the United Nations, in regional conflicts, and in shaping the new global narrative. This rebalancing is not always visible because it doesn't follow the script of conventional diplomacy. It's happening through back channels, in energy deals conducted without dollars, in military exercises conducted without Western observers, and in tech transfers that go unreported. While the world focuses on formal alliances like NATO, a second network is emerging looser, quieter, but no less powerful. And Iran is becoming a central node in that network. The most profound consequence of this shift may not be an immediate war or a dramatic declaration. It may be the slow erosion of the West's ability to dictate terms. As Iran and its allies create alternative routes for trade, defense, and political unity, they reduce their dependence on Western systems. The dollar's dominance in oil trade, for example, is being challenged by deals settled in yuan, rubles, and crypto. Western sanctions lose some of their teeth when nations find ways to operate outside their reach, and the perception of who leads the world begins to change, not through force, but through slow, strategic independence. In this way, Iran's secret alliances are more than a matter of national survival. They are part of a larger wave, a realignment where power becomes more evenly distributed, where multiple centers of influence rise, and where the world's future is no longer written by just a few. This shift is subtle but seismic, And once it reaches the surface, the world may find that it's no longer standing on the same foundation it once believed to be unshakable. Tension, when stretched long enough and wide enough, eventually snaps. The same holds true in global politics. For years, Iran's secret alliances, strategic moves, and shadow networks have grown in strength and complexity. Each quiet deal, every silent handshake, has brought the world one step closer to a turning point. Now, as these alliances mature and global divisions deepen, the world finds itself inching toward a collision that could send shockwaves across continents. The pieces are already in place. The buildup has begun. What happens next is no longer a question of if, it's a matter of when. The danger lies not just in Iran's ambitions, but in the convergence of global factors that amplify them. The United States is stretched thin, navigating multiple geopolitical tensions across Europe and the Indo-Pacific. NATO is unified on the surface, but strained underneath by political differences, economic fatigue, and the rise of nationalism in member states. Meanwhile, conflicts in Eastern Europe, growing instability in parts of Africa, and unrest in Southeast Asia are spreading the world's attention and resources thin. In this vacuum, Iran's actions, once considered regional, begin to take on a global significance. Its alliances are no longer dormant. Russia is openly defiant against Western structures. China is steadily building its own global order with economic coercion and technological dominance. If Iran decides to act more boldly, whether through direct military engagement, a surprise escalation in the Strait of Hormuz, or a nuclear threshold breach, it will not act alone. Its allies will either support it in action or shield it diplomatically, economically, and militarily. That collective support changes the stakes. The world will not be facing a lone nation. It will be facing a coordinated challenge to the existing global order. The most alarming part of this is that the ignition point could come from something seemingly small. A drone strike gone too far, a tanker seized in disputed waters, a proxy militia launching an attack that crosses a line. In moments like these, the world turns quickly, diplomatic pressure mounts, military postures shift. Economic sanctions trigger counter-sanctions, and then, what once seemed unthinkable becomes reality, a regional spark lighting a global fire. Iran, knowing this, plays the game with remarkable patience and precision. Its leadership understands escalation. It understands how far to push and when to pause. But alliances change the equation. With support from other nations that share its grievances and goals, Iran gains confidence. It feels less isolated, more protected, and more willing to test boundaries that were once carefully avoided. That's where the collision becomes likely, not because Iran miscalculates, but because it calculates that the world won't or can't stop it. When that moment comes, it won't just be a crisis of the Middle East. Oil markets will tumble, trade routes will close, alliances will be tested. The United Nations will hold emergency sessions as nations scramble to contain the fallout. But by then, the structure of global politics may have already changed. Iran's rise, powered by unseen partnerships and slow, burning strategy, will no longer be a backroom concern. It will be the central story of a world waking up too late. And so, the shock isn't just in the explosion of events that may follow, it's in the realization that the groundwork was laid in plain sight, that the buildup was ignored, that the warnings were dismissed as distant noise. But history often turns not on loud declarations, but on whispers made in shadow. And the echoes of Iran's secret alliances are growing louder by the day. The collision is coming, and when it does, the world may find itself staring not at a new crisis, but at a new reality. One shaped not by the powerful who ruled before, but by those who prepared in silence. For years, the global community has watched Iran with a wary eye, tracking its nuclear progress, its involvement in regional conflicts, and its open defiance of Western power structures. But what many fail to understand is that Iran was not just resisting, it was preparing. Each alliance formed, each deal struck in secret, and each maneuver carried out under the radar was not just a reaction. It was a step towards something larger. Now, the pieces are nearly all in place, and the world stands at the edge of a moment it never anticipated. The shock won't come from Iran's intentions, those have always been clear. The shock will come from how much it has already accomplished in silence. The world believed it had time to pressure, time to negotiate, time to wait, but Iran used that time differently. It studied the system that sought to contain it. It learned its weaknesses: economic over-reliance on specific trade routes, diplomatic fractures between allies, public fatigue with endless wars, and the distraction of great powers chasing multiple crises. Iran didn't need to fight head-on. It needed only to wait until the system strained just enough to make its move. While sanctions piled up, Iran built resilience. While threats were issued, Iran built reach. It formed ties with nations that, like itself, had been pushed to the periphery, nations willing to engage in quiet collaboration for the sake of survival, defiance, or ambition. This was not a coalition of ideologies, it was a coalition of interests, and interest, more than anything else, drives international action. These interests converged behind closed doors, in back channels, and through deals that never made the front page. But they were real, and now they are ready. The world will be shocked not just by what Iran does, but by how ready it is to do it. This is a country that has invested deeply in cyber capabilities, missile technology, and regional proxy networks. Its partnerships with Russia and China have deepened beyond diplomacy into shared operations, intelligence exchanges, and coordinated resistance to U.S. influence in Latin America, Africa, and parts of Asia. Iran has built quiet relationships that can be activated when needed, not with armies, but with logistics, cover, and soft power. One day, an event will trigger the unveiling of these networks. It might be a sudden advancement in Iran's nuclear program. It might be a flashpoint in the Strait of Hormuz. It could be an Israeli-Iranian standoff that goes too far. But when that event comes, Iran will not be scrambling to react. It will be executing a plan years in the making. The world will look for signs of panic and find instead a coordinated response, allies issuing statements in its defense, trade partners refusing to comply with sanctions, proxy forces activating across regions, a chorus of support where the West expected only silence. That is the moment the shock will arrive, not in the act itself, but in the realization that Iran is not alone, that it never truly was, and that the structures designed to isolate and deter it are no longer as effective as once believed. The game has changed, the players have changed, and the rules are no longer written by just one side. This isn't just a shift in power, it's a shift in perception. The world will come to see Iran not as the defiant outsider, but as a central figure in a new global order, one where quiet preparation defeats loud warnings and where silence, used wisely, can shape the future more powerfully than any threat. By the time the world understands what has happened, it won't be able to undo it. The alliances will already be active, the moves will already be made, and the shock will no longer be about Iran's actions, but about how little anyone did to stop it before it was too late. Power does not always arrive with the roar of tanks or the flash of missiles. Sometimes it comes quietly through influence, through persistence, and through the ability to reshape narratives without ever taking center stage. Iran has long understood this principle. It has never been the world's most powerful nation by size, economy, or technology, but it has mastered something far more enduring, the art of patience. And in that patience lies a deeper kind of strength, one that may soon redefine its place in the world and shock those who underestimated it. While much of the global community focused on quick wins and short-term policy, Iran played the long game. Its leadership has not changed with election cycles or bent to foreign pressure. Instead, it has remained consistent in its vision: resist, adapt, and prepare. Iran's political system, whatever its flaws, has provided continuity and strategy, a rare asset in a world constantly shifting between administrations and ideologies. That consistency has allowed Iran to build layer upon layer of influence, brick by brick, over decades. Rather than confronting its adversaries directly, Iran has chosen to influence events from the edges. It has built networks rather than empires, alliances rather than occupations, and it has done so with a kind of quiet resolve that few in the West took seriously until now. Every move was measured, every reaction calculated. Whether in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, or Yemen, Iran extended its reach not by force alone, but by embedding itself into the political, religious, and military structures of these societies. This kind of influence does not fade easily. It becomes part of the very fabric of nations. At the same time, Iran was watching the world. It saw the fractures in Western alliances, the growing fatigue with endless wars, and the economic vulnerabilities exposed by over-reliance on centralized systems. And it waited while sanctions tried to choke its economy. It waited while threats were made, lines were drawn, and red lines were crossed. But with every passing year, Iran grew more resilient. It learned to operate under pressure. It learned to survive without permission. And in doing so, it became stronger than it was ever expected to be. That patience now appears to be paying off. Iran's alliances, once seen as fragile and opportunistic, are proving durable and strategic. Its economic tactics, once mocked as desperation, are being studied as models of resistance. Its proxy networks, once dismissed as unstable, are now embedded across entire regions. The country that was meant to collapse under pressure has instead become the architect of an alternative system. And soon, the world may have to confront this unexpected truth. Iran is no longer just reacting to global events. It is shaping them. The shock, then, will come not in a sudden announcement or a single event. It will come in the realization that while the world moved forward, Iran moved deeper. While others changed course, it stayed focused, and while the global order assumed its dominance was unchallenged, Iran quietly prepared to rewrite the script. This is not a new war waiting to begin. It is a new reality waiting to be recognized. And when it arrives, it will not feel like an invasion. It will feel like a shift, as though the ground itself has moved. Because it has, not by force, not by noise, but by patience, precision, and persistence. And when that moment comes, the question won't be how Iran did it. The question will be how so many failed to see it happening all along.